Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
It's your favorite hosts from Green Thread, Allie.
And Alexis.
And we're here again to pull on that green thread to keep you connected to your climate. Today we're going to be talking about how nature has Wi-Fi.
What? Crazy.
They have their own version of Wi-Fi. But before I get into that, Alexis, did you know that plants can warn each other when danger's around?
Can they?
Like little besties, like, hey, P.S., you got a girl behind you.
Mama, a girl behind you. Mama, a danger behind you.
No, literally. But they do it through a chemical signal, which is really interesting. So, like, it's not just, like, fungi and mycorrhizae, but it's also, like, trees. They can talk to each other, just, like, have a little network. So I wonder if they have, like, a 5G.
Oh, yeah.
Nature
like
5G?
little cell towers. Like, how does that... Do they got AT&T?
I know,
Like,
right?
What's
Can
their
I
coverage?
But this just gets into our topic for today, which is how nature is interconnected. And that could be not just from plants to plants, but from plants to animals, animals to animals, animals to people, plants to people, all of the things. In fact, I'm sure after this episode's over, you're going to be like, wow, everything has a way of connecting to each other, which is what we hope to tell you. But what's interesting is that a lot of the human to nature connection happens through both physical and psychological. The psychological side is what's called, I think it's biophilia. It's like a word for it. So whenever you're thinking like, oh my god, I love being outside, I love nature, I'm just feel so at peace, that's biophilia.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I've never heard that term in my life.
I hadn't either. And at first it sounded a little weird. Like I'm like, that sounds a little bit like a phobia.
Yeah.
But once I like understood, I was like, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in fact, I saw this like famous I guess poet. He had a lot of biophilia poems, one of which was just as there is an interdependence of flowers and bees, where there are no flowers, there are no bees, and where there are no bees, there are no flowers. So they are really one organism. And I was like,
oh, that's beautiful.
It really
I
is.
love that. I remember in a biology class at some point last year, we had talked about there's some like forests that everything underground can be connected and just be like one entity. Like even if it's a whole forest full of separate trees, it's one organism.
Yeah.
Which I know we had mentioned mycorrhizae, and that's kind of how that can happen. But I thought that was really interesting. Like it's all one heartbeat at the end of the day. Everything works together, you know?
That's actually like a beautiful way of saying it. It's all one heartbeat, because it really is. I mean, if you say you like, I don't know if it would be a temperature thing, but like if you had some sort of signal that you were a threat to a plant, it could send that threat to all its neighboring plants, letting them know like something's around, so they can like it's like if you put your finger in one of those plants, what are they called? A
Venus flytrap.
Thank you, a flytrap. I was thinking of trap, and I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna have to mess this up." And they like close up, and then they like stay closed because they're like, that wasn't food.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. And there's also like we were talking about at the very beginning, there's so many different levels. So it's not just plants to plants, plants to animals, animals to animals. It's so many different things. I have a few examples, which I won't say all of them because they get a long list. Like I said, everything's connected. But my favorite couple that I found was, we all know like fish to like coral, because like fish to like a clownfish to anemone, like Nemo. Mutualistic relationship there. There's also fish to fish. They have a mutualistic relationship of cleaning themselves off to make sure that they're healthy. There's one that's really interesting. It's called an ant-plant mutualism, but they're oh god, I'm gonna butcher this.
It's okay.
Myrmecophytes. I think that might be myrmecophytes, but they're a specific like it describes a relationship between ants and plants. That's like kind of a fun jingle.
Plants.
There's also fig trees and fig wasps, and I was like, I've heard of that one. And then like a bunch of like epiphytic plants and host trees, things like that. So there was so many different examples, and I kept going down the list of them. In fact, those specific ones were from DGB Group, which I can link more, so you can go through and on your own time and find all those relationships and really get into it, because you can geek out if you're not careful.
Yeah, for sure. And while you're going through those, and while I was kind of doing some research for this episode, I was thinking about what types of relationships there are out there between nature. And I noticed you mentioned mutualism.
Yes.
So just to break it down for y'all, in case you
Yes.
don't know, there's this thing called symbiosis, which is basically a relationship between different species, different organisms. There's three different types. There's parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. Parasitism, kind of obvious, parasite,
Right.
one is being harmed and one is benefiting. So, kind of like a host and parasite situation. And then there's mutualism, where neither are harmed and both benefit from the situation. And then commensalism is when one organism benefits and the other is not affected. So maybe a whale and barnacles is a good example of that. But you brought up a lot of good examples. I mean, they are everywhere. Everything is connected. I know we've already said it many
Yeah.
times, but literally everything is connected, whether you realize it or not, whether you know it or not. There's some type of relationship between really everything. And while I was doing my research for this episode, I also found, and it was like a web page on the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute website, but it's about connections in nature. So a lot of them were about humans and nature.
Yeah.
But it was really, really interesting. I think it was just, I don't know if I just said it, but connections in nature was kind of the heading of the page. So definitely check that out. We'll link it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool.
I like that. Yeah. And going off of like they're everywhere. They're everywhere for a reason. And we were just talking about color in nature and how that's important for signaling. And this is another example for like biodiversity. So like interconnectedness, that's a really hard word to say, is important for biodiversity, and biodiversity is important for interconnectedness. And mostly just to show that there's a healthy ecosystem where you are.
Mhm.
And I think there's a very interesting and complex relationship between human resilience and interconnectedness. And I
Yeah.
was looking into that because I believe, like, honestly, right before we met, because it
Yeah.
was like pretty much right as I knew your name,
Uh huh.
we were at the academic showcase at Georgia Highlands, and my specific project for that, I guess, talk or poster
Mhm.
was to learn how there's a connection between human health and wildlife decline, which is a whole other topic for a future episode. But it was just like showing how we rely on plants
Yeah.
because of medicinal uses.
Right.
But that's like goes into the interconnectedness. So like one plant might have specific biofactors that another one doesn't. So like maybe they can communicate to
Mhm.
each other like
Mhm.
what that use is, and then we can take that and use it for ourselves. Which wait, okay, that might sound wrong because it could be like a overexploited issue,
Yeah.
but hopefully it'd be from like a healthier ecosystem and wouldn't have to worry about doing too much harm or something that's not sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we preach many, many times, humans have done some really bad stuff for the environment, but we can do really good things too.
Yeah, we can.
And in the past, as you're talking about biophilia earlier and feeling at peace in nature,
Mhm.
there's a lot of psychological
Right.
benefits for nature, for being out in nature as being a human. Again, when I was researching this episode, I found this article on earth.org, and it was referencing some other studies and everything. And it said that it's been proven by up to 832 independent studies. So this is not a one off, this has been highly studied, that nature contact enhances people's health and well being. And that time spent in green and blue spaces has been shown to improve mental health by lowering stress and negative emotions and boosting mood and cognition. So I thought that that was super interesting that,
Yeah.
there is a positive connection between spending time outside and your mental health and your physical health as well and your well being overall. And then those colors in nature, as we talked about in the last episode, that
Mhm.
kind of connects there too with greens and blues. Those are some natural colors to help you mentally as well.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the like neutral tones are becoming a huge popular trend
Yes.
in like color schemes. I mean, look at our I guess you could call them curtains,
Uh-huh.
even though they're not really up as curtains. They're so popular because I think it does subconsciously bring us a little bit closer to
Mhm.
that. And there's literally like environmental therapy, like just being
Yeah,
outside is a form of therapy itself. And
absolutely.
I don't know why it took me so long to realize what my passion was because literally as long as I can remember, like when I was really, really young, maybe 4 or 5 years old, the
Mhm.
only place I wanted to ever spend time was outside.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be inside. I would like do like all I could until the sun went down, and
Yeah.
then I wouldn't want to come inside. It was a
Mhm.
really crazy like feeling to think like the world is your oyster and you're like
Yeah.
out there a little tiny human and
Yeah.
everything is so big.
Mhm.
It's just like crazy. And we're talking about all these things are what I like to say above ground
Uh-huh.
I guess sensations, but there's also a whole below ground network, which was what
Mhm.
we briefly touched on when we like started the episode. But that could be what we're like mentioning as our 5G like fungal network, or what they like to call it as the I think it's a specific word for it if I can get my notes here. Wood Wide Web. And I was like
Wood Wide Web, I love it. I'm all about it.
I was like, that's such a cute little like play on words,
That's
but it
adorable.
describes it
It
perfectly.
does.
And when I was like doing my research, the one crazy fact that I found was in a single teaspoon of healthy soil, it has as much organisms, more organisms actually than people on Earth.
Wow, in 1 teaspoon,
Yes.
there's more organisms than people on Earth.
And that's from IUCN.org, and I can link that as well for if you wanted to like look at it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm in a soils class right now this semester, and I'm so excited, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But that is insane.
Yeah, learning about like micro and macro organisms that live in soils is honestly my
Fascinating.
favorite thing, because
Mhm.
like you think of all these little critters that you don't normally think about when you're walking across the grass.
Yeah.
They're there and they're making the soil like amazing.
Yeah, they're
And
making things happen. They're working overtime.
really going back to our Red Bull for bees, we should have like
Yeah.
Red Bull for like insects, just in
Literally.
general.
Literally.
But most of like the networks that we talk about are connected through a actual like scientifical name, which is mycelium, which are also made up of hyphae, but these are like threads that wrap or like from the fungi to the roots of like maybe a tree or a plant. But they're the ones who like basically it's like a big spider web, which is why I think they
Yeah.
mentioned like wood wide web.
Mhm.
And 90% of plants they depend on those fungal networks, maybe for communication, for like resources, like sharing resources amongst it's true that like trees do deliver, like if one is not as like adapt to having all this water and another one is, like they can like share the
Yeah.
resources amongst themselves and kind of like basically share the load, is what I
Yeah.
like to think of.
I think that's so sweet. Like, oh, the trees are sharing. They're sharing the love. They're sharing what they have. We need to be like them and share what we have.
That's what I'm saying, we can learn so much
We
from
can.
trees.
We can go outside, look at a tree for like an hour, and then come back and tell me what you learned.
I'm really honest, we have like a question box, just like everybody. People
Yeah,
that are on the live should definitely tell us what they think of trees
for
and
sure.
how they use their trees.
For sure.
There's also a large fungal, or the largest fungal network
Mhm.
in, I think it's called Malheur National Forest in Oregon.
Okay.
The actual fungi is Armillaria oysterae. Honestly, the Greek names,
Scientific
Latin names
names.
suck,
Yeah.
but it's 2,385 acres of just like
Wow.
fungi. And they're also the oldest. They're about 8,000 years old and they
Wow.
weigh a ton, like literally a ton, not even
Yeah.
just like, yeah. But I thought that was so interesting how there are places in the world where this is like the main thing that's going
Yeah.
on. Like it's not like, we have a couple mushrooms here and there and a tree maybe there and they're
Uh-huh.
talking underneath and saying, hey, howdy, but like it's not a big deal. But then you can go to
Mhm.
these places and there's like, that's the biggest part of
Yeah.
the forest. And I think that's so cool. And I really want to experience it so bad.
Yeah, I would love to go there one day. And I think that's honestly the forest that I was thinking of earlier when I said we mentioned it in biology class,
Oh,
that
really?
it's the
Yeah.
largest network. Because I remember we had talked about it because, like I said, it could be considered, what is it? Is it one organism? Can we consider it that? They're all connected.
Right.
It gets a little bit messy. The lines get a little bit blurred there, but I think that's fun.
No, it truly is. And I think it also is kind of cool to like think about how they all started and the
Yeah.
fact that they're that old and they've been around for that long.
Yeah.
Like they're obviously doing something good and well because they've been able to sustain it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just makes you think, what if we followed along and maybe like, oh, I wonder if we even have like research I guess projects
Mm-hmm.
studying their like bioforensics in a way of like, looking deeper in and just saying like wonder how they use these resources and how they start and how they die if they had to,
Yeah.
because knowing how to prevent that maybe would
Mm-hmm.
be a good like, preventative measure for like preserving our natural resources for future reference,
Yeah.
or just like to make sure we're not doing anything to harm them. I
Mhm.
don't really know. I know fungi are very resilient to a lot of things,
Very. Mhm.
but I don't know if there's like a measure that they would like surpass that would actually
Right.
kill them. I don't
Right.
know.
Like, what's the threshold for something to
Exactly.
actually kill them and kill off that entire network? Is there something, where it's like it can be a whole blackout for the whole system? Like, is there something that could do that? I wonder if a natural disaster would have to come through, or something like that. I'm sure there is research on it. And
Yeah,
honestly, after this episode, I want to look more into that for sure.
I know, because like they are so vital for ecosystems. So for us to know how to protect them and preserve them is really important for like a longevity of whatever
Mhm.
place that is. So I like how you said blackout as if it really
Yeah.
were like a
Like
network
an
blackout.
internet blackout, grid, like going dark, stuff like that.
That's hilarious. And like not only do they protect like the resources around them, but they also are protecting you,
Mhm.
because they fungi decompose like plant matter, and if we get like if they all go away or something happens and there's a blackout,
Right.
then we could ultimately be in like a vegetative swamp.
Right, absolutely. And how you mentioned earlier with the way that we can use plants and their medicinal properties and
Right.
harvest things from that these networks have created. If something were to go away, then it wouldn't be looking good for us either. So,
No, not at all. I mean, I there was also another fact that I found out about them and I did not know before, but they're what this person referred to as metabolic wizards. And
metabolic wizards.
yeah,
Okay.
they can break down they said that because they can break down explosive radioactive wastes. Also,
Wow.
crude oil and a lot more things that
Yeah.
just seemed a little bit too dangerous for
Yeah.
mention, but that's from bbc.co.uk, so I can always link that as well. And I thought that was really interesting to see all the things that they decompose or
That
break
is
down.
so interesting to me. Like I'm sitting here, my mind has been blown, y'all. Like I didn't know this. I did not know this. But see, we're learning here. Because this is totally going off topic, of course.
That's okay.
But just thinking about alternative energy and with
Yes.
nuclear energy is so very powerful, but the waste from it is
Right.
the worst part. And that's the thing. We don't really have a long-term solution for nuclear waste right now, or else we could be, using that for a lot of different things. Um so that's I wonder if there's research into that on how to use that, like, and how has that been tested in the past? How did they find that out? I wonder if they just did on a small scale,
Yeah.
obviously just, let's see what happens, that just blows my mind.
Well, I know that the biggest like way that they were able to kind of figure this out was by Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And the fact that like you can now walk around,
Yeah.
and that's because of so many years of it being able to break down. Like,
Right.
I mean, granted, if you kicked up dust there, you probably would get sick.
For sure.
But it's still like the principle of the matter of like it's not as bad as it was.
Yeah.
10 years ago even, and that's all because of the plants.
Mhm.
The animals that would have been deadly,
Yeah.
and alternatively like probably make them what do you call that, like uh when they basically become like the a different version of themselves. I'm forgetting the name. It starts with an M.
Uh uh
You get what I'm saying?
Mutated?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mutations.
Okay.
Wow, guys.
Here we
Brain rot
go.
today. But that's like one of the main things that they would succumb in versus plants who are like, let me eat it up.
Yep. We'll take care of it. We got it.
But that was pretty much all that we were like mentioning, or on my side, I was mentioning for today. But it was really interesting to know how important like fungi is and how
Yeah.
interconnected everything is. And like I said, we will link some of the resources that we use so you can go in and do a deep dive of all the ways that there are interconnectedness, communications, and like relationships between species. And just knowing when you're walking outside next that everything underneath you is talking. So you're not alone, and there are people around you that are, or things around you that are communicating.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Y'all can go down the same rabbit holes that we've gone down by,
Yeah.
by us putting the links. But thank you so much for watching and for listening along with us and pulling on that thread.
Yeah, and if you are only listening to us audibly, we have a few fun facts that we always mention in the beginning of our videos. So if you want to check us out on YouTube, you can see where our topic for today tied into our fun fact, as well as we do have some other socials like on TikTok and Substack and Patreon that we host like lives and newsletters and things you can kind of have behind the scenes exclusive features for us.
Yeah.
But other than that, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.